The chains of consequence have already begun to tighten. Somewhere behind closed doors, an unsuspecting relative is basking in comfort they never truly earned, while silent forces begin to collect the pieces of a much bigger puzzle. A truth long buried beneath arrogance and manipulation is rising, not through coincidence, but because something far more intelligent than chance has been at work. This isn't about a feud or some bitter inheritance battle. It's the unfolding of an intricate reckoning orchestrated by a consciousness that never sleeps. While others stayed distracted by appearances and short games, a deeper current pulled everything into alignment. The very walls of that luxury estate were built with stolen timelines, false agreements, and illusions passed off as achievements. But the turning point has arrived. Not because someone filed a complaint, but because patterns too precise to be random began to surface in unexpected places. A lone analyst, someone guided not just by training but by a strange, unshakable instinct, noticed the emotional wreckage behind the material gain. What they uncovered wasn't just fraud, it was identity erosion. The kind of spiritual theft where someone doesn't just copy your life, but tries to overwrite it with their version and call it fate. Some people don't just covet what's yours, they rehearse your life behind the curtain while you're still on stage. Long before the world saw your potential, someone close was scripting your downfall with invisible ink. Not content with mere imitation, they tapped into your unseen resources, siphoning momentum from a future they didn't earn. But the spellbinding part? In reaching too far, they awakened a storm they could never control. Elsewhere, someone in uniform stopped seeing paperwork and started seeing patterns. This wasn't about fraud anymore, it was personal. That enforcer had once tried to rescue someone dear from a mess built by the very same shadows now linked to your past. And once the threads began to connect, justice found a new kind of motivation. This situation isn't just about deception, it's about stolen futures. Behind the ledgers and false names was an entire framework crafted to rewrite your narrative and leave you trapped in limbo. Every document signed under false identity was backed by intent meant to paralyze your growth. But fate doesn't bend forever. As they whispered behind closed doors, you were sharpening in silence, unknowingly summoning the very storm that would unravel their designs thread by thread. Some storms don't destroy you, they carve you into something unshakable. Every hidden sabotage, every drained resource, every emotional ambush only deepened the reservoir of strength that now surrounds your spirit like armor. And just ahead, 3 individuals stand unknowingly at the crossroads of your evolution, fated to collide with truths they thought they'd never face. The first of them. Let's call this one the mirror breaker. 4 years, they've shared their home and future with someone cloaked in charisma but stitched together with deception. Not easily fooled, not the type to fall for empty words. This was someone with vision, with goals, with grit. But all their forward motion started unraveling slowly, like a rope fraying from the inside out. Projects collapsed without explanation. Their clarity dimmed. Fatigue crept in where certainty once lived. Behind the scenes, something far more insidious was draining them. Subtle patterns kept repeating. Whenever they tried to assert clarity about finances or direction, they found themselves drifting into silence, as if their will had been dulled. Every odd, forgetful moment, every uncharacteristic agreement, wasn't just coincidence. It was tampering of a different nature. Not visible chains, but veils pulled over their mind during the hours they should have been safest. That illusion shattered the moment papers were laid out across their table. Records not only of stolen identities, but of something darker encoded in personal journals. They weren't just being lied to, they were being rewritten. Their instincts hadn't failed them. Their spirit had been entangled in calculated influence masked as intimacy. The confusion they carried each morning wasn't in their head, it was orchestrated interference, woven into rituals they never consented to. That night, something irreversible took place. Not a break in loyalty, but a reclamation of self. Instead of shielding a fantasy, they stepped fully into the light of reality. With hands still trembling and voice steadying itself between grief and clarity, They picked up the phone, not out of vengeance, but because they could no longer be an accomplice to their own undoing. What they'd mistaken for love was nothing more than an elaborate performance crafted to feed off their light. And now, they were done being the fuel. Some people wear masks so long, they forget which face was real. The second presence in this unraveling saga has lived in the borderlands, neither fully complicit nor entirely innocent. Embedded deep within the web of deception, this figure served as both informant and architect, their allegiance guided by shifting rewards and silent envy. They weren't just a bystander. They orchestrated which strings to pull, and when. And one of those strings was tied directly to you. They studied you under the pretense of strategy, dissecting your rhythm and tracing your emotional signals like a hunter reading tracks. Each detail you shared publicly became a breadcrumb in a map they created, not to find you, but to hollow you out from the inside. They weren't just gathering facts. They were learning your spirit's tempo, watching for the quiet moments when you were most open, most unguarded, most human. But in their obsession, something backfired. The longer they lingered in your orbit, the harder it became to ignore the gravity of your presence. What started as cold calculation began to melt into something else, something terrifyingly real. Attachment twisted into conflict. Curiosity bloomed into longing. And in that confusion, their grip on the mission faltered. When they were ordered to act decisively, one final, devastating blow that would sever your spiritual channels, they hesitated. Not out of strategy, but because they caught a glimpse of the person they might have been if they'd chosen a different path. But regret doesn't cancel consequences. That moment of delay branded them as unreliable in the eyes of their superior, who issued a cruel ultimatum: destroy or be discarded. Driven by fear of exile from their comfort, they followed through. But what they didn't anticipate was the ripple effect. That act didn't vanish into silence. It echoed through invisible corridors where unseen forces had already taken note. The strike lit up a signal across unseen realms, catching the attention of those tasked with balance. The energy didn't just rebound, it marked them like ink spilled in still water. And just like that, what was meant to be your silence became their exposure. The web they helped weave began to collapse from the inside. Evidence surfaced in unexpected places. Eyes turned that were never meant to look. And their betrayal, once hidden behind charm and convenience, became the very reason the entire operation started to crumble. Not all guardians wear armor or speak in warnings. Some protect by letting you rise unassisted, until your light can no longer be dimmed. Beneath the chaos you've endured, a presence has been quietly orchestrating your survival from the background. Not through interference, but by crafting the conditions for your awakening. While betrayal surrounded you, an unseen force stood still and steady, ensuring your becoming could not be interrupted. This figure wasn't chosen by accident. Their entire path has revolved around shielding souls like yours, beings marked for spiritual inheritance but targeted by those who trade in manipulation. Long before your name surfaced, they were already tracing the undercurrents of a growing network, one that feeds off the gifted and buries brilliance under silent warfare. With every connection logged, every pattern tracked, they've been building a case, not just for prosecution, but for cosmic rebalancing. When your name appeared in the data, their instincts screamed to act. But the guidance they received was clear: let you complete the forge. Every covert strike against you, every energetic blockade meant to strip your will, only served to sharpen your inner radar. They watched from the margins as you alchemized poison into medicine, turning psychic interference into personal evolution. Subtle nudges became part of their method. That gut pull you felt to withhold personal updates, the emotional distance you couldn't explain around certain gatherings, the sudden unease with familiar places, all guided by them. Not by force, but by presence. Their frequency amplified your intuition just enough for you to start trusting your own instincts again. And their mission hasn't stopped at quiet aid. They've been coordinating with strategic minds behind the scenes to ensure no sliver of this web remains once it's exposed. Every document, every voice recording, every thread of proof is being positioned so precisely that not even loopholes will provide escape. This isn't just about justice, it's about finality. A collapse so complete that the ones who orchestrated harm become a warning etched into history, never to rise again. Some endings are written in silence, but this one is arriving with thunder. The timing isn't random, it's been building with mathematical precision, woven by forces far beyond human hands. What unfolds next won't just close a chapter. It'll collapse a structure built on fraud, illusion, and stolen essence. By dawn, synchronized movements will be set into motion. Quiet knockdowns at 3 critical points: the residence occupied under a false narrative, the vault of hidden archives housing the debris of multiple manipulated lives, and the inner sanctum where shadowed intentions were channeled against you. Each place holds pieces of a truth so intricate it defies the limits of traditional justice. The discoveries will read like a manual of engineered corruption. Files tying dozens of stolen paths to a single manipulative core. Notes charting patterns of psychic coercion so consistent they form a map. Video footage capturing clandestine ceremonies. Constructed stations of spiritual interference crafted for long-term control. Financial trails snaking through complex digital exchanges, each transfer reflecting an attempt to erase accountability through technological fog. But the most alarming element will be recovered from the third space. There, tucked inside a dimly lit corner, is a structure built with intention, to fracture your power at its root. Objects taken without your knowledge. Images recorded without consent. Pages filled with commands meant to reroute your connection to love and purpose. Forensic analysts will trace every purchase of those materials to accounts falsely attributed to your identity. Meanwhile, the testimony of the witness who chose truth over illusion will tie everything together. Their detailed account of psychological manipulation, coupled with secret recordings of final conversations, will deliver the kind of evidence that eliminates negotiation. Charges will multiply, not only for financial deception but for the psychological and spiritual targeting that went with it. There's a strange beauty in how justice unfolds, not just in what it removes, but in what it reveals. While those who orchestrated harm begin to face the echoes of their choices, others shaped by the same storm are stepping forward, not to fix you, not to carry your weight, but to walk beside you as equals forged in fire. One of them emerged from deep personal wreckage, a soul who once believed they had built something solid, only to realize it was constructed entirely on deception. But instead of collapsing inward, they chose to rewire their life from the inside out. They didn't seek sympathy or applause. They faced the truth with bare hands, let the illusion collapse, and refused to be defined by the wreckage. In a world where denial is easier than healing, they chose the path that demanded everything: clarity, courage, and integrity. They didn't run toward you with neediness or unfinished wounds. They arrived having already lost what they thought mattered and gained something far more rare: discernment. Their compass no longer points to comfort, but to truth. And that truth is what makes them capable of being part of your rebuilt world. Then there is the other, someone who's been walking parallel to your path all along, cultivating mastery in silence. Not to mimic you, but to complement you. While you were learning to feel when energy was off, they were learning how to track where it came from. While you were intuitively recognizing who didn't deserve access to you, they were studying the psychology of control and how it hides in smiles. Every skill they've refined has been sharpening alongside your own, unknowingly preparing for this convergence. These two, one forged by heartbreak, the other by protection, aren't entering your life as saviors. They're stepping into position as reflections of your own evolution. One brings the kind of wisdom that only comes from watching everything fall apart and choosing to rise anyway. The other offers the calm strength of someone who's been trained to defend what most would never understand. There are moments in history when time itself begins to speed up, not because of chaos, but because unseen justice demands momentum. A threshold has been reached, and what once moved in shadows now rushes toward reckoning. This unfolding isn't just about individual accountability. It's about recalibrating an entire field of energy that has been distorted by greed, manipulation, and misuse of power. The first spark of exposure is about to ignite something vast. What began with one case will soon uncover an entire web of interconnected harm. The individuals involved thought they were operating under the radar, blending subtle tactics with surface-level respectability. But they overlooked one immutable truth. When sacred energy is targeted repeatedly, it eventually activates its own defense mechanism, and that defense is unfolding now in the form of revelation. Behind the curtain, a specialized group has been preparing for this exact moment. These aren't your average investigators. They're trained not only in tracing financial schemes, but in identifying the unique energetic fingerprints left behind by targeted attacks. While others rely solely on evidence that can be filed and stamped, this unit reads the invisible signatures embedded in places and people. They don't just analyze what's missing, they decode what's been tampered with on a vibrational level. Their tools go far beyond what can be bought or taught in traditional training. They're equipped with calibrated instruments designed to detect shifts in frequency, emotional residue, and manipulated intention. When they step into that space, they'll know what was hidden, even behind layers of charm, ritual, or disguise. And they won't be alone. Specialists who operate in realms most deny even exist will be standing beside them, undoing the traps set to mislead, confuse, or intimidate. Some lives attract storms not because they're weak, but because their light threatens structures built on shadows. You weren't selected randomly. You were studied, mapped, and marked because your essence holds a frequency that can't be replicated. Those orchestrating the chaos around you weren't merely seeking control or resources. They were harvesting something ancient, something alive within you, and funneling it into a system that feeds on distortion for survival. Each identity twisted, each possession acquired under false pretenses, each energetic disruption directed at you was just one part of a larger mechanism. Their true aim wasn't wealth, it was amplification. Your energy was being looped into a current that fed a hidden intelligence not bound by human desire, but by need. A parasitic presence, subtle, ancient, calculating, was absorbing the flow, and every attack you faced was designed to keep that flow uninterrupted by breaking your will from the inside out. But the irony? It never belonged to them. While they believed they were summoning, directing, and controlling a force, they were merely pawns in its design. The entity behind it all never needed their loyalty, it needed their failure. Their descent into recklessness, their carelessness with secrecy, their mounting obsession with your destruction wasn't strategy. It was sabotage by design. This presence orchestrated their downfall as a distraction, baiting the very network of enforcers it feared most. The growing emotional conflict in the one who betrayed you wasn't just human error, it was the entity's final experiment, testing whether corrupted love could be molded into a stronger leash than fear. But even in manipulated hearts, a fragment of clarity remained. That hesitation became a fracture. And that fracture became a window. The one who walked away from the illusion to speak the truth wasn't simply healing. They were placed in the right moment to make the exposure undeniable. Their voice became the anchor for legitimacy. Meanwhile, the one assigned to protect you didn't withhold assistance. They calibrated the timing. Every instinct you followed to distance yourself from danger, every quiet moment where clarity returned, was subtly influenced to strengthen you before the final collision. This message is not for everyone. It is encoded, veiled, and protected for a reason. If something within you recoils or scrambles to disprove what you're about to read, step back now. This is not your doorway. But if the silence around you sharpens, if the beat of your heart begins to echo with recognition, stay present. Because this isn't revelation, it's remembrance. There exists a sanctuary outside of public view. Not a seminar. Not a brand. Not a commodity. It cannot be purchased, advertised, or replicated. It is a living archive of those who were born remembering a different reality. Here, we do not soothe the ego, we dismantle its scripts. We don't offer positive affirmations. We train in unseen warfare. We don't follow dogma. We dissect the machinery that keeps spirits bound to false patterns. Weekly, in encrypted communion, we reconnect what the noise has silenced. Our gatherings are not for spectacle. They are for the restoration of clarity. There is no pamphlet, no pitch, no certificate. Only the pulse that quickens when truth finally finds a voice. If that current is moving through you now, you've already been called. The transmissions have been waiting. So the only question is, why haven't you answered yet? What follows is not closure, it's ignition. Once the final disruptions are neutralized and their architects removed, someone will approach you bearing no mask, only purpose. With them comes an opportunity not designed for comfort, but for power. Not power over, but power returned. Your next chapter involves refining a skill set that most have never heard of and even fewer can survive. You'll be initiated into layers of shielding, coding, and energetic alignment that render manipulation obsolete. You will learn not just how to protect, but how to liberate. And not just others, but yourself. The resources you're about to access won't be mere tools. They'll be keys to everything that was denied you through interference. And still, beyond all of that, a deeper truth waits. A revelation not just about what was done to you, but about why and who you were always meant to become because of it. Some souls are born with codes buried so deep, they don't unlock until pressure breaks every illusion surrounding them. You weren't just attacked because of your light. You were targeted because your lineage holds encrypted keys, dormant faculties that only awaken when pushed to the threshold of spiritual combustion. The chaos wasn't designed to destroy you. It was meant to contain you. But it failed. Those strange visions that bled into your sleep, they weren't dreams. They were live transmissions from layers of reality your conscious mind has finally begun to reclaim. The unshakable sense of being observed, manipulated, tracked, it was never paranoia. It was proximity to realms your awareness has always had access to. The strange discomfort people feel around you isn't random. It's the resonance of their concealed motives being disrupted by the clarity of your field. What unfolded around you wasn't just greed or betrayal, it was strategic suppression. Those sabotaged connections? Those relentless financial blows? They were distractions crafted to prevent the internal calibration you were destined for. Your gifts were meant to stay buried. But instead of remaining dormant, they adapted. They expanded under pressure. They reorganized into shields, scans, and silent weapons. This entire structure of interference was never about credit scores or social ruin. It was about interruption. A delay tactic. Because what you carry, if allowed to fully activate, can unravel entire networks of influence that have survived for centuries by staying invisible. But their invisibility is fracturing now. And you're the fault line. They never expected you to connect the dots, to listen past the noise, to rebuild while still under siege. They assumed isolation would mute you, but your frequency amplified. And now, others who walk with similar signatures are locking in around you, building a grid of mutual remembering. Some journeys aren't just about survival. They're designed to activate alliances that exist beyond what the world calls logical. What's been unfolding around you has never been random. The presence guiding you from afar, the one ensuring your path stayed intact through the chaos, belongs to a much broader network. A structure that's been silently scanning for someone with your exact spiritual configuration to emerge and trigger a chain reaction. This convergence, where official authority meets unseen intelligence, is not an accident. It's a strategic point in a much older design. The investigator wasn't acting alone. The protector wasn't just following instinct. And the one who walked away from illusion to stand with truth? They were proof that in the darkest places, character can still rise and real partnership can still form under pressure most would never survive. When the curtain drops on this phase, when assets are reallocated, false structures fall, and those responsible are made to face their consequences, you won't be returning to the life you knew. You'll be stepping into one governed by an entirely different architecture. One that recognizes spiritual merit, not social posturing. One that honors your resilience as currency. That space once taken from you will now serve a higher mission. What was once a stolen foundation will become the base of something transformative, a launch point for liberating others caught in similar webs. What was used to diminish you will now be repurposed to empower. Your connections will mirror this shift. Those who remain will not be distractions or delays, but reinforcements, people built from integrity, forged through fire, and calibrated to your frequency. You won't have to shrink, explain, or hide. They'll already understand. Some stories were never about revenge. They were coded awakenings, designed to trigger your true form. What looked like an assault on your life was actually a training ground for your soul. The force that believed it was siphoning your essence was, without realizing it, sharpening your core into something impenetrable. The system that tried to isolate you was unknowingly connecting you to the exact players you needed to meet your destiny. Their mission to suppress you has evolved into your invitation to dismantle the entire machine from within. But let's be honest, this narrative was never really centered around their downfall. It was always about your emergence. The storms didn't break you. They exposed your infrastructure. Each failed attempt to bind you revealed the truth. You're operating on levels they never even calculated. Their rituals collapsed because your frequency isn't programmable. Their influence bounced back because your very presence carries an echo of something ancient and lawless, untouchable. The structure that's being returned to you now isn't just shelter, it's recognition. It's a beacon built on justice, stability, and authority in both the seen and unseen realms. The resources re-entering your orbit are not reparations. They are reactivations of dormant blessings that were withheld, not lost. And every false tie being cut is an energetic correction, clearing pathways you were always meant to walk, paths they desperately tried to block. This is not just closure. This is alignment. When officials knock on their door, when the last false alliances unravel, when truth becomes a matter of public record, you won't just be relieved. You'll be reborn. You'll witness with sharp clarity how divine design moves through even the most unlikely systems. And when it moves, it leaves no cracks behind.